Celia Novak, last call for the 6:05 to Boston Track 4. The intercom crackled over the bustling station. Celia's heart dropped as she raced past the pretzel stand, her suitcase wheels rattling behind her, only to skid to a stop at the platform edge just in time to watch the train doors close and the cars pull away. Her chest heaved. The one train she couldn't afford to miss gone. "Perfect," she muttered, raking a hand through her thick brown curls. "Just perfect." Her phone buzzed weakly as she pulled it from her coat pocket. 5% battery, no signal, of course. Boston was 3 hours away and her job interview was first thing in the morning. She glanced around the station, trying to look calm even though panic was climbing up her throat. The benches were full, the ticket counters closed. She looked down at her phone again, willing it to work. Nothing. She bit her lip and turned slowly, scanning for anyone who looked remotely safe and not too irritated to ask for a favor. That's when she saw him. He was sitting alone on a black bench, dressed in a tailored navy coat that fit just a little too perfectly, black gloves in one hand, tapping the other on his knee like he was waiting for something or someone. His jawline was sharp, his dark brown hair a little tousled in a way that said money, not mess. His shoes looked like they cost more than her monthly rent, but there was something about him that didn't scream snob. He looked grounded and oddly observant. Celia took a breath and stepped forward. "Hi, sorry, do you think I could borrow your phone for just a second? Mine's dead and I really need to call a friend." He looked up at her, his eyes a deep stormy blue that locked onto hers like he already knew her. His expression softened instantly. "Yeah, of course." "Here." He handed her his phone without hesitation, not a second of suspicion, just kindness. "Thank you," she said, quickly dialing her best friend's number, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. She sighed and stared at the screen like it might suddenly work. "I really needed that train." "Bad day?" he asked. "The worst. Job interview tomorrow, can't miss it. But now I'm stuck in the city with no hotel booked and no way to get there." He tilted his head. "Boston?" "Yeah." He stood up, tall and confident, and slid his gloves on. "Come on," she blinked. "Sorry, I've got a driver. I'm headed north anyway. I'll take you." Celia laughed once, unsure if he was joking. "Wait, are you serious?" "Completely. I'm not a serial killer, promise." He held up his hands. "You can sit in the back, keep the window cracked if it helps." She studied him for a moment. Something about him felt too calm, too collected, but there was no sleaze in his eyes, no weird energy, just something surprisingly warm. "I don't even know your name," she said, shifting her weight. "Julian Nash," he said, offering a hand. Celia shook it. His grip was firm, confident. "Celia Novak." "Nice to meet you, Celia Novak. Shall we get you to Boston?" Against everything she thought she'd ever do, she nodded. "Okay. But if you turn out to be creepy, I will jump out on the highway," he laughed. "Fair, though I think you'll be safe." The black SUV was waiting just outside the station, a sleek high-end car with tinted windows and a driver in a suit. Julian opened the door for her like it was second nature. Inside, the leather seats were warm, the scent clean and subtle expensive. "You sure you don't mind?" she asked as they pulled onto the road. "Not at all. I hate driving alone." "You just offer strangers rides a lot, only the ones who miss their trains and borrow my phone." She smiled despite herself. "Okay, that's fair." They drove in silence for a few minutes, the city lights fading behind them. Celia glanced over. Julian was watching the road, elbow resting on the window, relaxed like this wasn't completely insane. "So what do you do?" she asked, trying to cut the weird tension of being in a car with a stranger who was way too attractive and clearly rich. "Consulting," he said simply. "Is that code for something?" He grinned. "Maybe," she raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to tell me, are you?" "I will, eventually." "Cryptic." He glanced at her, amused. "What about you? What's the interview for?" "Editorial assistant, magazine in Boston. It's a long shot, but I need it." "You a writer?" "Trying to be. Rent doesn't care about trying, though." He nodded. "Well, whoever interviews you would be an idiot not to hire you." She looked at him, surprised. "You literally just met me." "I know. But I have good instincts." They fell into comfortable conversation after that: music, books, favorite takeout meals. She found herself laughing more than she expected. He was witty but not arrogant, confident without being pushy, and he listened. Like, actually listened. By the time they reached Boston, it was past 10. He had the driver stop at a boutique hotel with glowing lights and a gold-trimmed lobby. "I can't afford this," Celia said, stepping out of the car. He handed something to the valet and turned to her. "You don't have to, already booked." "Room under your name," her jaw dropped. "Julian, no, you can't do that. Just consider it a thank you for the company, and please don't argue. I'll feel weird if I leave you without a place to stay." "I don't even know you. You will," he said with a small smile. "And I have a feeling this isn't the last time we'll see each other." She didn't know what to say to that. Her heart was thudding too loud to think straight. "Thank you," she said finally, clutching her suitcase. "Good luck tomorrow, Celia." She turned toward the doors but paused. "Why'd you really help me?" he shrugged. "Maybe I missed my own train once." Their eyes met for a long moment. "Good night, Celia. Good night, Julian." And as she walked into the hotel, she couldn't shake the feeling that missing that train might have been the best mistake she ever made. Celia stood in front of the mirror in the hotel bathroom, her nerves jangling beneath the crisp lines of her navy blouse. Her curls were pulled back into a low bun that threatened to unravel, but she didn't have time to fuss. She'd barely managed 4 hours of sleep, and her alarm had yanked her out of a dream that felt too close to reality. Julian's voice, low and steady, saying her name. She shook her head. This wasn't the time to think about the man who'd appeared out of nowhere and handed her a lifeline like it cost him nothing. She had 20 minutes to walk into that interview and pretend she belonged in a room full of people with Ivy League degrees and polished portfolios. She grabbed her tote and stepped into the elevator, the soft chime announcing each floor as it descended. In the lobby, the concierge handed her a plain white envelope. "This was left for you this morning, Miss Novak," she frowned. "From who?" He didn't say. The man replied, already turning to answer the phone. Celia opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single card, thick and textured. "You've got this. No doubt. Jay." There was no logo, no contact info. Just the quiet confidence of a man who didn't seem to question anything he said. She folded the card and pressed it to her chest for a second before tucking it into her bag and stepping out into the crisp Boston morning. The interview was held in a slate-gray building with polished glass windows and a lobby that smelled like citrus and ambition. The editor, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper voice, asked questions that ranged from logical to borderline cruel. Celia kept her tone steady, her answers thoughtful. By the end, her throat was dry and her palms were cold. "Thanks for coming in," the editor said at last, her tone unreadable. Celia nodded. "Thank you for the opportunity." She left with no clear idea of how she'd done. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds rolling in fast. She walked several blocks before realizing she had nowhere to go. Her return train wasn't for hours, and she'd already checked out of the hotel. She ducked into a bookstore and wandered between shelves, pretending to browse while her mind spun in 1,000 directions. Her phone buzzed faintly in her coat pocket, its battery now nearly gone, and her heart jumped when she saw the name Julian. "How did it go?" She hesitated. "I survived. That doesn't sound promising." "I didn't get thrown out, which feels like a win." "You hungry?" Her stomach gurgled in response. "Starving, actually. There's a place on Tremont. Corner booth's already ours." She paused. "You're still in Boston?" Turns out I had a meeting rescheduled. Timing worked out. She wasn't sure if she believed that, but she didn't press. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When she arrived, the bistro was quiet, warm, and tucked between 2 art galleries. Julian was already seated by the window, his jacket draped over the back of his chair. He stood when he saw her, his eyes scanning her face like he was checking for damage. "How'd you really do?" "I think I made them curious enough not to toss my resume in the trash." "Then you probably have it." Celia slid into the booth. "You say that like people always get what they want. They do. If they want it badly enough. That's dangerously optimistic." "I'm not an optimist," Julian said, unfolding his napkin. "I'm just rarely wrong." She raised an eyebrow. "That must be exhausting." He gave a low chuckle. "Only for other people." Their waiter arrived with a menu that listed no prices. Celia's stomach dropped. She opened her mouth to protest, but Julian cut in smoothly. "I already ordered for us. Hope you like seafood," she blinked. "You just assumed. You look like someone who orders the risotto but wishes they'd gone for the scallops." She narrowed her eyes. "Do you analyze everyone this much? Only when I'm interested." The words hung between them, heavier than anything he'd said before. Celia leaned back. "Why me?" Julian didn't flinch. "Because you looked like you were about to fall apart and still kept moving. Because you didn't ask for anything more than a phone. Because you didn't recognize me." She tilted her head. "Should I have?" He hesitated. "Most people do." Their food arrived: pan-seared scallops in a citrus glaze, wild mushroom risotto, and a basket of warm, herbed bread. Celia tried not to visibly swoon as the aroma hit her. "I'm not used to meals I can't afford," she said, picking up her fork. "I didn't invite you here to make you uncomfortable." "No, I mean it's nice, just not my usual reality." Julian studied her. "What is your usual reality?" Celia hesitated, then set her fork down. "Freelance gigs that pay in exposure, roommates who steal my oat milk, and landlords who pretend light switches are a luxury." His lips curved. "And still you smile, because if I don't, I'll scream." "That's fair." She took a bite of the scallops and tried not to moan. Julian didn't look away. There was something about the way he watched her that made her skin feel hot, like he wasn't just seeing her but reading between everything she said. "So what do you actually do?" she asked, pushing back. Julian paused. "I manage a few companies." "Manage or own?" He didn't answer right away. "Both, and they are real estate, tech, a few media acquisitions." Her eyebrows lifted. "So you're one of those people who buys failing magazines and turns them into apps?" "Only if the content is worth saving." She leaned forward. "And what makes content worth saving to you?" "Truth. Originality. Someone who says something real instead of what people want to hear." She stared at him. "That's oddly specific." He didn't blink. "It applies to more than just writing." The air between them felt tighter now. Celia reached for her water, only to notice her hands were trembling slightly. Whether from nerves or something else, she wasn't sure. "Where are you staying tonight?" he asked. "I hadn't figured that out yet." "My place has a guest suite. You'd have your own space, no pressure." She hesitated. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because I want to." "That's not an answer." Julian leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Because I haven't cared this much about someone in a long time. And I don't want this to end with a goodbye outside a restaurant." Celia's heart thudded so hard she thought he might hear it. "I don't trust easily," she said quietly. "Good," Julian replied. "Neither do I." She looked down at her plate, then back at him. "What if this is a mistake? Then it'll be the best one we've ever made." She didn't say yes. But she also didn't say no. When they left the restaurant, the sky had opened up and rain poured onto the sidewalk. Julian pulled her under the awning, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "Still thinking?" he asked. Celia nodded, barely breathing. "Take your time," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in a long time, she believed someone. Celia stood motionless in the marble-floored foyer of Julian's penthouse, her breath catching as her eyes swept across the open space. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a living mural, the city glittering in the dark beyond. A curved staircase climbed to a second level, its railing smooth and sculptural. Everything gleamed: brushed steel, polished stone, and subtle accents that whispered old money rather than shouted it. Julian watched her from the doorway, his coat folded over one arm. "I know it's a lot," he said. She turned to him slowly. "This place looks like it belongs in an architectural magazine." "It does," he said simply, then added, "Well, it was featured once." Celia blinked. "Of course it was." "I'll show you to the guest suite," he said, walking ahead, "unless you'd rather leave." "I can get you a car or another hotel." "No," she said quickly. "I mean, yes, show me. I just need to remind myself I'm not dreaming." He led her down a quiet hallway, past abstract art she couldn't name but knew was expensive. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment, with soft lighting, a plush bed layered in ivory linens, and a small terrace overlooking the city. A tray sat on the dresser with a carafe of water. a single drinking glass and a vase of pale orchids. "There's a closet and a full bath through there," Julian said. "Everything should be stocked." "Julian." Celia turned toward him, uncertain. "Why are you really doing this?" He leaned against the doorframe, his expression unreadable. "Because I want to, no expectations, no conditions." "Just sleep, Celia, we'll talk tomorrow." She watched him walk away, the door closing softly behind him. She didn't undress. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the city lights, her heart too loud for sleep. Morning came with sunlight creeping across her face through gauzy curtains. Celia rubbed her eyes and reached for her phone, only to find it recharging on a sleek wireless pad beside the bed. A folded note rested beside it, "Coffee's waiting when you're ready." She padded barefoot down the hall, still in her borrowed robe, her hair a wild halo around her face. She found Julian on the terrace, a dark mug in his hand, dressed in slate gray slacks and a linen shirt with the sleeves pushed to his elbows. His phone was beside him, untouched. "I wasn't sure you'd stay," he said without turning. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. "But the robe helped." He looked over, amused. "I'll make a note of that." Celia wrapped her arms around herself. "You weren't just being polite last night, were you?" "No," Julian said, his voice low. "I was being honest." "Why me?" she asked, her brow furrowed. Don't finish that sentence." He set the mug down. "You're not just anything." "I don't fit in your world," she said, her voice quieter now. "You have art I can't pronounce." "I barely made rent last month." "I grew up in a house with water damage and a broken furnace," Julian said. "I didn't always live like this." She blinked. "Seriously?" "My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. I didn't come into money until after college." "And even then, it wasn't overnight." Celia stepped closer. "Why haven't you ever told me that?" "Because you never asked." She stared at him. "You're not what I expected." Julian's gaze didn't waver. "Neither are you." He walked past her into the kitchen. She followed reluctantly, watching him pour her a cup of coffee from a French press. He handed it to her without a word, then leaned against the counter. "I have to ask," she said slowly. "What do you want out of this?" Julian paused. "I want to see what happens." "Without pretending this isn't complicated." Celia raised the mug. "Complicated is generous." "I don't care," he said. "I'm not interested in easy, I'm interested in you." She didn't know what to say to that. Her chest tightened, the air between them suddenly too full. The doorbell rang sharp, unexpected. Julian's brow furrowed. "Excuse me." She watched as he disappeared down the hall. She took a cautious sip of coffee, trying to steady herself. His world moved fast, and she wasn't sure if she was keeping up or barely clinging to a thread. She heard muffled voices, Julian's low and sharp, another man's louder. Then silence. Julian returned a moment later, something dark in his expression. "I have to take care of something, business-related." "Bad timing," his jaw flexed. "There's never a good time for this kind of issue." "Is everything okay?" "It will be. I'll be back in a couple of hours." She nodded, unsure what else to say. Before he left, he paused by the door. "Stay, please. I want you here when I get back." Then he was gone. Celia wandered the penthouse like a ghost, touching nothing, opening no doors. She sat on the edge of the sofa, then stood, pacing. Eventually, she found the library, an actual library with shelves that stretched to the ceiling and a ladder on wheels. The titles ranged from economics to poetry, but it was the notebook on the desk that caught her eye. It wasn't locked. It wasn't hidden. She opened it carefully. Inside were sketches, dozens of them. Buildings, cityscapes, bridges, each one dated and signed in the corner with a precise hand. "You're not supposed to be in here," came a voice from behind. Celia spun around so fast she almost knocked the notebook off the desk. A woman stood in the doorway, elegant in a cream wrap coat and red heels, her short blonde hair perfectly styled. Her eyes were sharp and assessing. "I'm sorry," Celia said quickly. "I didn't mean you're staying here," the woman asked, her tone cool. Yes, I see." "Who are you?" Celia asked, standing her ground. The woman stepped forward. "Julian's lawyer, and sometimes, unfortunately, his damage control." Celia narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not the first woman he's tried to save from the rain." Celia's stomach dropped. "I didn't ask for anything." "No," the woman said flatly, "but you are here in his home wearing his robe." drinking his coffee. I don't know what you think this is, but I don't think, the woman cut in. I know him, and I recognize the pattern. Celia's hands clenched into fists. Then you don't know him at all. The woman studied her for a beat, then gave a small, dismissive nod. We'll see how long that opinion lasts. She turned and walked out without another word. Celia stood alone in the middle of the library, the notebook still open behind her, her heart pounding for an entirely new reason. She didn't know if this was a test or a warning. But something had just shifted, and she wasn't sure if she was still on steady ground. The penthouse was quiet when Julian returned. His footsteps echoed lightly on the hardwood floors as he moved through the entryway, his tailored coat damp at the cuffs from the drizzle outside. He paused near the kitchen, expecting the faint sounds of movement, maybe the hum of the espresso machine or a door creaking open. But the silence pressed in. He found her exactly where he feared in the library, standing near the center of the room like a statue carved from disbelief. Celia didn't look at him when he stepped inside. Her fingers rested on the edge of a shelf, the ridges of a leather-bound volume pressed into her palm. Someone came by, she said, her voice low but steady. I know, Julian replied. Marion. She wasn't supposed to speak to you. She didn't say much, Celia replied, finally turning toward him. Just enough to make it clear I don't belong here. He didn't move closer. She's been with me since the beginning. Her job is to protect the life I built even from me. Celia's eyes searched his, hard and unreadable. How many others has she warned off? That's not just answer me. Julian exhaled, his shoulders stiff. 2 years ago. Before I understood that someone looking out for your interests isn't the same as understanding your heart. She crossed her arms, her guard rising. So she thinks I'm another project, a rescue. You're not. Then what am I? Julian stepped forward now, slowly, deliberately. You're the first person who's ever sat across from me and told the truth without flinching. Who didn't care what my last name could buy. You didn't need anything from me, and that's exactly why I wanted to give you everything. Celia swallowed, her voice cracking ever so slightly. You barely know me. I know what I feel when I'm around you, and it's more than I've felt in years. She looked away. Julian's voice dropped, gentler now. You're not a convenience, Celia. You didn't fall into my life. I watched you run toward your future even when everything was against you. Her jaw clenched. Then why does it feel like I'm standing in someone else's place? You're not, he said, but if you still feel that way, I'll prove it. He left the room. Celia stood frozen, unsure whether to follow or walk out and never look back. But a moment later, he returned with a slim black folder in his hand. He opened it silently and handed her the top sheet. She took it cautiously. Her eyes scanned the page, her breath catching in her throat. It was a formal offer letter. The publishing company, the one she'd interviewed with on official letterhead, editorial assistant, full-time, benefits, start date in 1 week. I didn't ask them for anything, she said quickly, her voice rising. I didn't want this if you. Julian shook his head. I didn't interfere. I only asked to be informed when they made the decision. They offered you the job on your own merit. Her chest rose sharply. There's more, he said, holding out a second envelope. She took it with trembling fingers, opening it to reveal a lease agreement for a sunlit apartment just outside the city, modest but beautiful, with a writing nook and a view of the river. I bought the building last year, Julian said. I've been restoring it. The second floor's yours for as long as you want it. No strings, her eyes burned. You can't just, I'm not giving it to you. You'll pay rent, fair market value, but the first 3 months are covered, so you can breathe. Celia folded the pages slowly, her hands shaking. Why are you doing this? Because I believe in you, he said, and because if you walk out of here thinking you're just a passing thing, then I've failed you. He stepped closer now, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. I never expected to meet you, he said, but I did. And I don't want to keep pretending this is some accident I can forget. Her voice barely carried. What if it's all too much? Then we take it slow. We figure it out together. Celia looked up at him, the fight in her finally quieting. You're not afraid I'll leave? I'm afraid I won't get the chance to ask you to stay. She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward, closing the space between them, and pressed her hands to his chest like she needed to feel that he was real. He leaned down and their lips met in a kiss that wasn't rushed or desperate, it was complete. Like everything that had been building finally found its place. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. "I don't need saving," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why I fell for you." Later that week, she moved into her new apartment overlooking the river. The job started. The deadlines came quick, the work intense, but she met every challenge with fire in her heart. And every evening, when the skyline turned gold, Julian would appear at her door, sometimes with takeout, sometimes with tickets to concerts she'd never dreamt of attending, and sometimes with nothing but himself. They never rushed it, but they never slowed down either. One night, as they stood on the rooftop of her building, the city glittering below them, Julian pulled something small from his coat pocket, not a ring, a notebook, the same one she had seen in his library. Only now, the last page had a sketch of a woman standing in the rain, her curls wild, her chin lifted, her eyes fierce. "You drew this?" she asked, her voice tight. "I started it the day you missed your train." She turned to him, her heart full. "I never thanked you." "You did," he said, his eyes soft, "when you stayed." She leaned into him, laughter mixing with tears. "You know what the crazy part is? Tell me. If I hadn't missed that train, if I hadn't asked for your phone, none of this would have happened." Julian wrapped his arms around her, holding her like he never planned to let go. "That's the thing about fate," he murmured. "It doesn't care about schedules." And in the middle of the city that had once felt too big for her dreams, Celia finally understood what it meant to be seen, to be chosen, to be loved exactly as she was. The early autumn wind rustled the golden leaves outside the publishing house as Celia stepped onto the street, her cheeks flushed from the whirlwind of her first press event. She clutched a canvas tote filled with bound galleys and notes, her heels clicking over the uneven sidewalk as she made her way toward the sleek black car idling at the corner. Julian leaned against the open passenger door, dressed in an open-collared shirt and a charcoal overcoat. He reached for her tote without asking. "Did it go the way you hoped?" he asked as they both climbed in. "It went better," she said, breathless. "I pitched a feature on underrepresented authors, and the editor-in-chief didn't just approve it, he asked if I'd consider leading the series." Julian gave her a look, both proud and unreadable. "Then they're finally seeing what I saw the first time you opened your mouth." She relaxed against the leather seat, letting the motion of the car calm her. "I still feel like I'm pretending to be the kind of person who belongs at those tables." "You're not pretending," he said. "You're catching up." They turned down a tree-lined street, headed toward the river. She glanced out the window, then back at him. "I've been thinking about what your lawyer said," she said carefully. Julian's jaw shifted, but he didn't interrupt. "She wasn't wrong about something," Celia continued. "Being with you, it's not simple. Your world moves differently, and I think I was afraid that eventually I'd either lose myself in it or lose you trying to keep up." His voice was quiet. "And now I think I was underestimating both of us." Julian reached over, curling his fingers around hers. "I don't need you to change, Celia. I just need you to keep being the person who challenges me." The car pulled into a gated drive lined with iron lamps, each flickering to life as dusk settled in. Celia looked out the window and frowned. "This isn't your penthouse." "No," he said, pushing the door open. "It's ours." She stepped outside slowly, uncertain, and followed him to the front steps of a stone townhouse framed by ivy and red maple trees. The door opened before they reached it, revealing a warm interior lit by chandeliers and flickering wall sconces. Julian turned to face her as they stood in the entryway. "I bought it a month ago," he said. "I was going to wait, but I don't want to wait anymore." Her eyes widened. "Wait for what?" He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not rushed, not flashy, just certain. "I don't care how fast this looks to the rest of the world. I've lived my life being measured and strategic. But you—" His voice caught for a moment, a rare crack in his composure. "You make me want everything right now." Celia's eyes filled as he opened the box, revealing a ring unlike anything she could have imagined. A single emerald-cut diamond set in a delicate gold band, elegant and timeless. "I want to build a life with you," he said. Not just the moments in between meetings or stolen weekends. I want mornings and midnight arguments and grocery lists. I want the boring parts, the real parts. She laughed through her tears. You're not making this very easy to say no to. Good, he said, his thumb brushing a tear from her cheek. Because I don't want a perfect answer, I just want the truth. She stared at him, her heart so full it ached. Yes, she whispered. His breath left him in a rush, and he slid the ring onto her finger like it had always belonged there. They didn't go anywhere that night. They stayed in, ordering dinner from a little Greek place down the street. They ate on the floor of the still unfurnished living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes and candlelight. Julian tossed his phone aside, unreachable for the first time in months. She curled into him on the couch later, his hand tracing slow circles on her back. Do you think we'll get used to this? She asked. What? Being happy without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Julian kissed the top of her head. I think we'll get better at believing it's real. A year later, they stood beneath a canopy of white blossoms in the garden behind the townhouse, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and the unlikely family they'd built. Celia wore a flowing dress with a lace neckline, her curls pinned with small pearls. Julian wore a midnight suit with no tie, his eyes never leaving hers. The ceremony was short, the vows honest and unscripted. When they kissed, the sky erupted in soft applause and falling petals. Afterward, instead of a grand ballroom, they hosted a dinner under strings of lights, long wooden tables filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Julian made a toast that left half the guests wiping their eyes and the other half laughing through their wine. Celia leaned into him as the night stretched on, her hand resting over his heart. I still feel like I'm catching my breath, she said. Good, Julian murmured into her temple. Because I plan on taking it every day. They danced barefoot in the grass under the stars, the music fading into crickets and quiet conversation. No cameras, no press, just them. Later, they returned to the townhouse, their home. Julian carried her over the threshold, laughing when she protested, and set her down in the middle of the kitchen. You're ridiculous, she said, smiling. I'm yours, he replied. That night, wrapped in each other and tangled in silk sheets, there were no more questions. No more doubts. Just two people who had collided by chance and chosen, again and again, to stay. And for the first time in either of their lives, forever didn't feel too big. It felt just right.